Hi, my name is Caroline Stevenson. I'm Programme Director of Cultural and Historical Studies here at London College of Fashion. And together with Ruby Hoette, I have co-curated this exhibition, MODUS Hosts. This is a collection of artifacts from the community, who are an interdisciplinary arts group based in Pontaine in Paris. They run a gallery space there, and they work with a large community of practitioners from across lots of different disciplines, but including fashion. So for the exhibition, the community sent us their entire archive from 2008, which includes 250 images, t-shirts and objects and films from all of the activities and events and exhibitions that they've produced since 2008. And we wanted them to be a part of our exhibition because we wanted to set up a dialogue between our MODUS community and their community based in Paris. So you can see that MODUS as a project is as much about the objects that people are creating as it is about setting up conversation, community, and collaboration within the field of fashion. So MODUS is a project that Ruby and I developed in 2018, and it was a way for us to bring together theory and practice within the field of fashion, but also to kind of capture a range of different fashion practices we were seeing out there in the world that were interrogating the boundaries of fashion, and through playfulness and criticality and criticism, really questioning what a fashion practice might be. We started MODUS for most projects end, and that's through the generation of a publication. We created this publication during a residency at Dutch Design Week in 2018. And it's designed by our friend and our colleague, Roland Brauckley, who created the logo for MODUS and also the visual identity. The book is designed to be opened at any point. It has no end, it has no beginning. And it brings together a range of different theorists and also practitioners who are writing about their understanding of their own practice within the field of fashion. Woven through the book is a glossary of practices, and the glossary of practices is the central thread of MODUS. It's an ongoing collection of verbs that describe different ways of being, doing, and thinking fashion. So the collection ranges from more experimental publications like this one, which is a zine about reading your underwear, to more classic or traditional academic books like The Empire of Fashion. And it's very important for us to show these things together to demonstrate that the boundaries of fashion and ideas about fashion are always expanding, and they're always moving forward, and they're there to be found in very established areas, but also in emerging and experimental areas as well. The title of the exhibition is MODUS Hosts, and we were interested in thinking about the idea of hosting as a curatorial method rather than placing an authoritative theme over the exhibition. So we've brought together an international collective of fashion practitioners, and along with the idea of hosting, we've created care labels for each of them that take the place of wall texts. And the catalogue for the exhibition is a collection of all of these care labels together. This is the Fashion Paratex dataset, which was created by Laura Gardner, who's based in Australia, and Femke de Vries, who's based in Amsterdam. And this is a collection of 34,688 snippets of text that were taken from mainstream fashion magazines that date back to about the 1950s to the 1990s to present day. And what's really interesting is when you start to look through these as a collection, is how ideas about fashion are communicated as much through language as they are through images, and how text within mainstream fashion magazines serves to anchor images in our minds. Something that's really stuck out to me is the specificity of colors and the way that fashion magazines describe colors within their magazines. So for example, here you can see phrases like carved emerald, pear-shaped sapphires, diamond dew, and a single gold bead of dew. What's also really interesting is looking at how the language that fashion magazines have used to describe issues like sustainability and also other political ideas, how these have changed over time, how the words that they use to describe them change, and how the ideas about them change also. These are a series of swing tags that were created by the designer Henrike Schimmel, who goes by the moniker Tenant of Culture. And although they're very small, they contain a lot of information. First of all, they use a kind of language of fashion that comes from the often overlooked part of our clothing. For example, our cuffs and the seams of our sleeves, and also the swing tags or the care labels that we find in our clothing. She looks at these as carriers of information about that garment. It shows where the garment has come from. It also shows where it's going and how it will be cared for, or maybe where it might go in the future as well. So Tennant of Culture's work has been very influential in the art world, especially in the last 2 or 3 years. She won the Frieze Artist Prize, and she also just had an exhibition at the Camden Arts Centre here in London. And it was very important for Ruby and I to include her work in this exhibition, because for us, it's not really art. It doesn't really sit in the world of contemporary art. For us, this firmly sits within the field of fashion, and it's very demonstrative of that expanded field, or those expanding boundaries of fashion practice. When this work is displayed within contemporary art contexts, oftentimes these small details, like the language of our, the kind of seams and cuffs, is overlooked. People don't really understand it. They see it more as a sculptural object, and a very beautiful sculptural object. But we were keen to bring it back into the world of fashion so that people could really understand the research process and the meaning behind the work. This is a series of magazines called Here and There, which was initiated by Nakako Hayashi, who's based in Japan. And Nakako spent a number of years working in the fashion media industry, and then decided she wanted to set up her own magazine that wouldn't have any advertising, so she would have complete freedom over what was included in it. And what she was really interested in doing was showing how within the field of fashion practice and within the field of media, networks or professional networks are more than just that. They're friendships, they're dialogues, and they're conversations. So what's contained in these magazines, and they go back to about the 1990s, are extended conversations over a long period of time between Nakako and her collaborators, such as Ellen Fleiss, Mark Bothwick, and Susan Chanchillo, that have happened over time and across distances for many, many years. And this is a dress that was in a Cosmic Wonder fashion show in the 1990s that Susan Chanchillo expanded so that it would fit her body. And Susan and Nakako have posted this dress back and forth to each other. They've worn it, they've repaired it, and then sent it back for the last 20 years. We've also included spreads from the recent issue and notes between Nakako and her editor that show the closeness that the two of them have and the creative process that they go through to create an issue of Here and There magazine. This is the work of Ellen Sampson, who is an academic and an artist based in London. Ellen spent a year in the Costume Archive at the Met in New York, exploring the methods and modes that archivists use when dealing with articles of clothing. And what she was really interested in is the emotional effects of working with objects that have loaded meaning and loaded stories within them. Stories about the people who have worn them, how they have been used, and the kind of traces of everyday life that's left on them. And what she's really interested in is how we kind of handle these objects when we know that they're loaded with so much meaning and so much personal history that doesn't necessarily belong to us. And what her work tries to do is it tries to show those kind of empty spaces, or those things that we don't know, those feelings that we have when we're dealing with other people's lives, and the care that we must invest in these objects. A lot of her work is printed on cyanotypes, which are these blue photographic images. And the cyanotypes, as well as Polaroids, which she has here as well, are very purposeful in that they are photographic processes and materials that are disintegrating all of the time. Polaroids degrade and they fade, and you can see some of the ones in here have faded as well. And that's reminiscent of these kind of stories that are also fading within these archives. For the exhibition, Ellen created a series of these posters of gloves, and visitors to the exhibition could take them away with them. On the back, it has a long explanation of her work and what it's all about. This is the work of Sue Tompkins, who is a contemporary artist based in Glasgow in the UK. And Sue collects random and overlooked phrases that we hear in our everyday lives. And she records them on paper using a typewriter, almost like a diary of the overlooked, very similar to Tenet of Culture. Performance is very important to Sue's process. Even the way in which she makes these works is very performative. She has a typewriter in the center of her studio, and she kind of dances around it and creates these works on paper. She also performs them live. She does readings of them. And she was also the lead singer in the band Life Without Buildings. This is work by Muslim Brothers, which is a fashion studio that was established in 2011 by Yane Levy and Tamar Levitt. It was named Muslim Brothers after the muslin fabric that's used in veiling, but also muslin fabric that is used as an integral part of the fashion production process. This work uses the language of the fashion editorial to explore the space between the city and the desert, but it also imagines our clothing as these feral objects or feral architectures that our bodies inhabit. Muslim Brothers are really focused on the ways in which clothing articulates and becomes part of the social systems that we engage with on an everyday basis. This is a film made by Collectible Malvestitas, who are Tamara Pobletti and Loretta Martinez from Chile. And Collectible Malvestitas means badly dressed collective or poorly dressed collective in English. And this duo works in the intersection between feminism and protest and also fashion. And this film is a reimagining or a remake of Martha Rosler's 1975 film Semiotics of the Kitchen. This film is called Semiotics of Sewing, and it looks at the symbolism of these objects that are involved in the manufacture and the make of fashion as symbols of violence against women. And they've taken each object and labeled it with a word. So for example, the sewing machine is related to the word precarity. The scissors are related to the word uprooting. And the pincushion is related to the word hurt. So in the film, they're dressed as garment workers, and they're demonstrating the different acts of violence that are involved in the manufacture of fashion, which is usually carried out by women and children. These are two garments made by Collectible Malvestitas out of dish towels and other domestic kitchen items that were collected from their friends during lockdown. And they take the form of these almost warrior costumes. And when used in protest, the skirts open up and they say undomesticated. This is the design practice of Kasia Gorniak, who runs a knitwear label called Talking Through Our Bodies. And we wanted to show the process that she goes through before her works go into production. So what you see here are her patterns and also her samples. Kasia's process always starts through dialogue with her friends and also other collaborators. And for this particular project, she was interested in the idea of performance, especially as it relates to knitwear and the ways in which our body moves through knitwear. And so she interviewed a number of different people about what they think performance means to them. So she spoke to choreographers, she spoke to dancers, and she also spoke to everyday people. And she recorded their responses, which have become the text that has then been knit into the garments themselves. So you can see how she's laid out the conversations across the patterns here and also in these posters here. And then you can see the conversations actually knit into the samples here. So this particular collection is just about to go into production and will actually be on sale in the next couple of months.